The if function in Microsoft Excel allows us to make choices in our Excel workbooks and worksheets. So if you have like some sort of a condition, like in this example right here, where you want to determine if something's a big number or a small number and then print out the text, you can use the if function to do that. You could also use the if function to determine whether or not something should even be displayed. So if a cell's content is empty, like it is right here in this example, and then you enter some data, you can then have a formula calculate using a nested function and display the results of those calculations. So these are all things you can do with the if function. It allows you to do programmatic logic. And in this video, we're going to learn all about the if function. So let's get to it. So here I am in Microsoft Excel. I'm going to show you how to use the if function. So I'm going to do that by creating this thing right here, where when I press F9 on my keyboard, and on the formulas ribbon right here, if you come over to calculate now or calculate sheet, the shortcut keys for that are F9 and Shift F9. So when I press F9, it's going to recalculate all of the formulas, all of the functions in my workbook. And you can see what it's doing here is it's randomly choosing a number. And if the number is more or equal to 100, so if it's greater than or equal to 100, it's going to print out big number. But if it's less than 100, it's going to print out small number. So we're going to see how to create that right now. And to create that, the first thing I'm going to do is insert a random function right here. I'm going to do ran between. And we learned about this in a previous video. So if you want to check out how to use ran and ran between, you could go to my YouTube channel and search for that. But I'm going to choose a random number between 0 and 200. And so that will randomly choose a number for me. And as I press F9 to recalculate this entire workbook, just to test that, I could see I'm randomly getting that number there. So now I have to create the if function. So I'm going to type equals if and then hit tab. And this is a nice little thing right here. When you type in the name of a function, it brings up different options for you. So you can look at those different options. Like if you're like, what kind of functions exist for if? You can see there's if err, if in a, not applicable, if s, right? There are all those. And so here you could then use your arrow keys to scroll through them and you could read a description. So that's kind of a handy, quick little thing to do just to see what kind of functions are available. You could just kind of guess, right? Like if, is there an if function? You could type it in and see what comes up. And then when you find the one you want, you can press tab. And then that's going to bring you into the syntax for the function. So in computers and programming, syntax is like in language, right? Like syntax is like, what is the syntax for that sentence structure? And in programming, syntax is what is the syntax for putting a function together? And you can see that this function here, we need to pass 3 things into it. So the first thing is a logical test. And so with the logical test, we have logical operators. And logical operators are like greater than, less than, equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. I'm going to show you something about that. I guess we'll do it right now. So I'm going to go into help here. I'm going to go over to help right there. And I'm going to search in help for logical operators and see if something comes up. And I didn't plan this before, so we will actually see if something comes up. And so here, hey, logical functions using if, calculation operators, and precedence. That sounds really good. I'm going to go take a look at that one. So I want the operators. We have plus sign, minus sign. Here we have equals, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and there's not equal to. So those comparison operators, and that's the phrase that is used here in Microsoft Excel apparently. Those comparison operators are super useful to know what kind of logical test you want to do. Coming back to creating our function, we want to do a logical test. And the logical test that I want to run right here is the value that is in this cell right here, just to the left of this function. So relative to where this function is at, one cell to the left of it, is that value in one cell to the left of it greater than or equal to 100? And so you can see I'm using this comparison operator right here, greater than or equal to. So that's my logical test. And then I have a value if true. So I could actually put in a value there like, hey, you got 777s. Or I'm cracking myself up. Or I could say, right, like this is going to be, if the value is true, I'm going to say that's a big number, right? I can type in big number. And if I'm going to put in text, I got to put double quotes around it. And then if it's not true, I could put in small number. Right, and so there's my small number, and then I'm going to put that little parentheses at the end to end my function, and you could just pause the video and kind of take that all in, and then I'm going to press enter, and now I'm going to press F9 just to make sure everything's working well, And I'm waiting. There we go. I got a small number and it tells me small number. And now I got a big number and it tells me big number. I like that. It's working the way I want it to work. So I'm going to take that, Control C, highlight all this, Control V, and now press F9. And I have the beauty of multiple calculations running automatically every time I press F9. And it's showing me my big numbers and my small numbers. One little note, whenever you are using things in Excel, it's always good to go into the documentation. And if you look up the if function, there's a nice thing to point out here. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that before our time together comes to an end, for this time at least. And so if you come down, there's the syntax, you can look at that. But one of the things you'll see is that when you do a comparison with text, you need to put text around the comparison. And that's in here somewhere. If you're going to use text and formulas, you need to wrap the text in quotes. And so you saw me do that right there. I just wanted to point that out to you in the documentation, because it's always good to look at the documentation. All right, so that's how you use the if function. And we're learning about all these different functions: if, rand, xlookup, the and function, text joining function. We're learning about all these functions in a series here so that we can create a random data generator. And based upon what we've learned so far, and by the way, if you want to check out the series, there's a link to it down below in the description. And also down below in the description, there's a link to download this workbook that you saw me use in this video. So if you want to play around with anything that you saw in the video, you can download the exact workbook that I was working on and try it out for yourself. In addition, in that workbook, using some of the skills we've already learned using xlookup and the rand between function, I created a little spreadsheet which will deal a hand of cards in poker. So you can see that here on the screen. And if you want to see that, you can also download that workbook. And if you want to check out this entire playlist where we're learning all these skills, that link is in the description below. If you're enjoying this, please hit that like button. And if you want to see these future videos I'm making, we're going to look at the and function next, and then we're going to look at working with text and joining text together, because that's all going to be part of building these random data generators. If you want to see those videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button, then toggle that little bell so you'll be notified when those videos come out. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.